Welcome to Ananya Child Development Center podcast, where we bring you insights from the front lines of autism intervention. I'm Jule, and today I'm incredibly excited to sit down with someone who has shaped hundreds of success stories in autism intervention. Please welcome Madhavi ma'am, the founder of Ananya.
Thank you, Joel. It's wonderful to be here.
Ma'am, you have been in this field for over 2 decades now. What's the biggest change you have seen in autism intervention during this time?
You know, Joel, when I started in the late 90s, autism was still this mysterious condition that many doctors in India weren't even comfortable diagnosing. Parents would come to us after years of being told, wait and watch, or boys talk late. But the biggest change I've seen isn't in the therapy approaches or the technology, it's in the awareness and acceptance.
That's fascinating. Could you share a story from your early days that really stands out?
Yes, I remember this one family. It was probably 2010. A mother came to us with her 5-year-old son. She had covered nearly 200 kilometers by bus because someone in her town had mentioned our center. What struck me wasn't just her determination, but what she said to me. She said, Ma'am, everyone in my family thinks I'm crazy to travel so far for therapy. They say nothing can be done, but I see something in my son's eyes. He's trying to tell me something. And you know what? She was right. The boy is in his 20s now and is working in his family business with his father.
That's very fascinating and incredible. What do you think made the difference in his case?
Early intervention, definitely. But more importantly, it was his mother's insight. She noticed something we still emphasize today. Every child communicates, just not always in ways we expect. Back then, we didn't have all the tools we have now, but we had something equally powerful observation.
That's very interesting. Could you please elaborate on that? How has your observation approach evolved over the years?
Of course, you see, in the early years, we were very protocol driven. But over time, I realized that each child shows us their path if we learn to watch carefully. Let me give you an example.
Please do.
Last month, we had a 6-year-old who couldn't engage in any of our standard activities. But during lunch break, I noticed something fascinating. He was arranging his food in perfect geometric patterns. Instead of stopping his unusual behavior, we used it. We built an entire intervention program around the patterns and shapes. Within weeks, he was making eye contact and attempting to communicate.
That's fascinating. It sounds like you're saying we need to follow the child's leader.
Exactly. But this is the crucial part. Following their lead doesn't mean letting them do whatever they want. It means understanding their natural interests and motivations, then building bridges between their world and ours. We call this connection before correction.
Connection before correction. That's powerful. How do you implement this practically?
Let me share something we did just last week. We had a 7-year-old girl who was completely fascinated with ceiling fans. Traditional approaches might try to stop this stimming behavior. Instead, we turned it into a learning tool.
How did you do that?
We created what we call fan math. When she looked at the fan, we'd count the blades together. Then we'd look at the other rotating things, wheels on toys, the hands of a clock. Gradually, she started making connections. But there's the beautiful part because we honored her interest instead of fighting it, she began trusting us with other activities.
That's brilliant. But I'm sure some parents might worry that this approach could reinforce repetitive behaviors as well.
This is such a common concern, and it brings me to something I have learned over these 20 years. The difference between supporting and enabling. You see, when we work with children's interests, we are not stuck there. We are building a bridge. Think of it like if you want to help someone cross a river, you start from where they are, not where you want them to be.
Could you give our listeners some practical tips on how to identify these potential bridges?
Yes. I always tell parents to keep what we call a joy journal. For 1 week, just observe and write down what makes your child smile. When are they most engaged? What do they do when left alone? What sounds or movements do they repeat? These aren't just behaviors, they are clues to our child's unique way of experiencing the world.
Wow, that's so practical. Speaking of experiences, You have worked with thousands of families. What's the most common misconception you encounter?
Without a doubt, it's a belief that therapy is something that happens only in a center. In that 1 hour session, I remember a mother who transformed her child's progress when she realized something crucial.
What was that?
She realized that every moment from morning wake up to bedtime is an opportunity for learning. She stopped seeing therapy as a destination and started seeing it as a way of life. Her son made more progress in 3 months than he had in a year of traditional therapy.
That's interesting. Could you give us an example of how parents can incorporate therapy into daily routines?
Of course, let's take something as simple as breakfast time. Instead of focusing on proper sitting or using a spoon correctly, we can turn it into a rich learning experience, for instance, by choosing between two breakfast options. This focuses on communication, helping to set the table. This helps the child learn to motor plan. Waiting for others to be served helps the child learn social skills, and requesting more food helps the child pick up functional communication. The key is not to make it feel like therapy.
But what about parents who are already overwhelmed with daily responsibilities?
This is where I often share what we call 3M approach. Mindful moments, being present in small daily interactions, mini steps, breaking down skills into tiny achievable parts, making it fun, adding playful elements to routine tasks. You don't need extra time, you just need a different perspective on the time you already have.
3M approach. Mindful moments, mini steps, making it fun. That's very interesting. Could you also give us a real example of how a family implemented this 3M approach?
Yes, there was this father, a busy IT professional, who thought he couldn't contribute much to his son's therapy because he only got home by 7 p.m. But we helped him transform bedtime into what we now call connection time.
Oh, how did that work?
Instead of rushing through the bedtime routine, he turned each step into a mindful moment. For example, during teeth brushing, he'd make funny faces in the mirror with his son. That's the making it fun part. They developed their own special signals and gestures, building communication naturally. Within weeks, bedtime went from being a struggle to becoming their special bonding time.
That's beautiful. But what about families who might be feeling discouraged by slow progress?
Huh. This brings me to something I'm really passionate about, celebrating micro victories. You know, we often miss progress because we are looking for big changes. Let me share a recent story that really illustrates this.
Please do.
We had a 9-year-old who had never initiated communication. His mother was feeling discouraged because after 6 months of therapy, he still wasn't speaking. But when we reviewed his progress videos together, we noticed something amazing. He had started looking at her expectantly before his favorite activities. That's communication. It's not words, but it's a huge step forward.
That's such an important perspective. Speaking of progress, how do you help parents set realistic expectations while maintaining hope?
You know, Jewel, I often use what I call the garden analogy. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You create the right conditions, nurture it consistently, and trust the process. Every child blooms in their own time.
That's beautiful. But in practical terms, how do you help parents stay motivated during challenging periods?
We use what we call the victory video journal. Parents record tiny moments of progress, maybe their child making eye contact for the first time, or using a spoon independently, or even just staying calm during previously challenging situations. When they feel discouraged, they can look back at these videos and see how far they have come.
That's fascinating. As we wrap up, what's your message to parents who might be just starting this journey?
I would say three things. First, know your child better than anyone else. Trust your instincts. Second, progress isn't always visible day by day, but it's happening. And finally, remember that you're not alone. 20 years ago, when I started Ananya, we had three families. Today, we have a community of thousands, all supporting each other.
Thank you, Madhavi ma'am. This has been incredibly insightful. To our listeners, remember you can reach out to Ananya Centers for support and guidance. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you to all the listeners. Remember, every child has potential. Sometimes we just need to change how we look for it.
Before we end today's episode, I want to share how Ananya can be part of your journey.
Yes, if anything we have discussed today resonates with you, please know that support is just a call away.
Ananya offers Parent Connect sessions. These are consultations where we understand your concerns and guide you on possible next steps.
We also have our parent support groups that meet once a month. It's a safe space where you can connect with other parents who truly understand what you're going through.
And for those who can't visit our centers regularly, we offer online consultations and home program guidance.
You can reach us at 98485 13192 or visit our website asap.org.in. We have centers in Madhapur, Banjara Hills, Kokapet, Alkapur, and Alagandla.
And here's something special for our listeners. Mention this podcast when you contact us and you'll receive a 25% off on your assessments.
Remember, the first step is often the hardest, but you don't have to take it alone. Whether you are just noticing concerns or have been on this journey for years, we are here to support you.